Thank you for joining me on this what has been long postponed entry. A few adjustments have been made and a few adjustments will be made in the coming weeks' time, however long it takes to repeat this generic cycle, which I loosely justify as an open art journal, but you could just spin it as a bit of self-indulgence / one of those podcast things amongst millions / whatever, who cares anyway, blah blah blah. So there is a few updates that I'll begin with. There has been a long pause, and in fact I produced or began producing a few entries before this current one, and simply wasn't able to finish it due to many other matters going on, things to do, and by the time I'd got so far into the process, it was so disjointed in its continuity between me trying to establish new segments, which I will talk a little bit about in a moment, but trying to set new segments kind of like a traditional podcast might do, because I have some things in mind for expanding upon that soon. But it was spread out over such a long period of time that in terms of constructing it. Now, it wasn't worth doing it, but there was some gems out of that which I would like to repurpose at some point. For instance, one segment that I've introduced as of this entry is a bit of a Q&A, just as a mental exercise, or just as a, again, whatever, who cares, nothing means anything, postmodern, la-di-da, this is a thing, etc. Now, the Q&A last time I picked some pretty interesting philosophical questions just off of a generic philosophical question website, and my answers, I think both of those questions were about free will, and somehow my answers both just became a roundabout elaborate way of me complaining about Wes Anderson and his films, if I can generously call them that. I don't really know why I felt the need specifically on that occasion to do that, but actually I think my answers did a half decent job of actually answering the philosophical question as well as throwing shade on that particular artist. But that bit of content will see the light of day sooner or later. Now, in terms of what I marked as reassimilating to functionality, this entry, by the way, is what I would call a crowbar entry, in that I haven't constructed a great deal, I just have a few keynotes and I'm talking off the cuff. Crowbar to just kind of get it in there and pick up momentum again, because it has been a while and there's still a bunch of other things going on to occupy my time. However, here we are, and the point about reassimilating to functionality is, other than my tendency to trail off into nonsense or profoundness, you know what? I think I'm nearing some kind of hybrid word there that will be incredibly hipstery and self-indulgent and almost makes me gag thinking about it. But on the other hand, it might just do a thing. Now, digressing again. Imagine that. Reassimilating to functionality. So one of the reasons why I'm probably digressing actually answers this question. I have, for this year really, up until late July, maybe it was early this month, had a phase of a longer going treatment involving my jaw and all this that I've spoken about plenty in the past. And the topic has inevitably dominated all my entries since January, and maybe a few prior to that. But from the phase that started at this year, basically up until a few weeks ago, consumed my life and consumed a great deal of these entries. But I was determined to push on with making these entries anyway, for some kind of sense of personal continuity. I mean, it felt like a good practice thing to maintain anyway, but I think it offered some sort of catharsis during a time that was just that I don't particularly miss. Now, coming out of that, it hasn't been the overnight spring in my step, sudden euphoria that I expected it to be, because it has been a long and challenging process while it was happening, with knock-on effects with breathing and spinal stuff and a whole bunch of things. Even when you take that factor away and shift to what is a lot less invasive phase that I'm having now, there is a period of adaptation, of re-assimilation to a basic norm of functionality, which is where I am at now. I suppose I just wanted to give a basic outline of that. I used an analogy actually when I was thinking about it the other day. I would kind of liken it perhaps to, say, you've been at sea maybe for like half a year, and then you come back to land and you have some sort of land sickness, and you're just inevitably you're going to feel disorientated just walking about and re-assimilating back to whatever normality you previously had and are having again. So the overall point is it's good news, it's welcome. It's a welcome change, but it has been a bit bewildering at the same time, and things are starting to happen again in my professional practice, as well as any other thing that could in any way be noteworthy to mention. But it is just a sort of what's a bit of a scrambled and stretched out way of that kind of kick-starting again. So I have an art commission that I'm working on, which is quite nice, and that I've just a canvas piece I've primed the other day, and that should materialise in the near future. In terms of more longer term art projects, creative projects, I've started doing a bit more figurative drawing lately, and started back at doing that and contemplating where I could progress that for more ambitious projects. Likewise with the animation, I've decided it's going to be good. The terminology isn't quite coming to me there. As I say, there's glitches in the matrix of my brain, flashy, wiry, electrical things, including terminology and vocabulary. Where was I? Animation. Oh yes, there we are. Animation. Isn't that easy? Isn't it? How do we do that? How did I start talking about something incredibly straightforward to explain? And yeah, I'm doing some animation. I'm going to do some animation anyway, along the same lines of the continuous stream pieces that I've done a while ago. I think there is potential to explore that further, because they were particularly successful and they have a lot of application for being repurposed. In fact, if you're watching the visual element to this entry right now, that there is an example of some of those sort of animated streams that have been repurposed, but there's much more potential with making more of those and different ways of repurposing them, including with the figurative drawing element that I want to progress. I think there is some potential there. A particular artist springs to mind, who I can't remember his name, but some sort of French photographer. He projects moving patterns over nude, female nudes usually, and yes, that, well, I should really remember his name. I think I can visualize his name written down, but it's French and, you know, weird. So yeah, something along those lines, which would be good. At least the concept of like using physical contours of the body and merging or exploring that intersection that I've talked about before, that's significant in my creative practice as much as what I value in creativity generally, which is sort of the intersection between the familiar and the inexplicable. But as more of that hopefully unravels soon in terms of the material I have in mind, yeah, there'll be more kind of details to unpack there. The other thing, I'm hoping to start back up a group art crit based in Canterbury, one which I did have going prior to the pandemic, and then there was a few Zoom sessions, but like with most things, has been completely in suspension. Most things regarding my life has been in complete suspension over the last 6 or so months. Well, I've just kind of focused what energy I've had on the bare essentials of getting by. So that hopefully will start again soon, and if you're listening to that and you live nearby or whatever, you know, be aware that is a thing that I think it showed potential last time, and you know, it would be great to have some kind of group, perhaps on a monthly basis, either over Zoom or, you know, in a cafe space or whatever. Well, you know how group art crits work, presumably. Something like that. Another segment that I would like to roll out, but have not been able to for this one. Next one, hopefully, is a bit of a guest segment, guest chat conversation. But I won't unpack that anymore right now. I'll leave that at that. That's something that is in store. Q&A. I already talked about my answers for the previous Q&A, but in this one I have, now this is the clever part of editing where I previously recorded it, so I'm going to start that now. So today's question, picked somewhat at random, is beauty objective or subjective? Feel free to enter any questions of your own, by the way, but for now, is beauty objective or subjective? Well, fuck. I'm kind of more inclined towards, what do you call it? There's a word, not beauty, but the divine. I'm interested in that as an idea or as a concept, particularly in art. More broadly speaking, I think whether it is with art or anything that any sensory experience really, anything that I'm presented with, that seems like that I'm impressed with the kind of there's a gracefulness and majesty and maybe divinity of it. There does seem to be something seemingly perfect, or just, that kind of wow, look at that factor. Now you could apply that. I mean, absolutely, that's what comes to mind when I think about beauty, or whatever we mean by that. And of course, we can, whatever you or I or anyone defines as beautiful can be measured by different metrics. But this is a very easy one to turn reductive, but there are certain aesthetics that I do find beautiful and majestic. There's definitely a tendency towards minimalism and functionality, but functionality in, nature, trees, oceans, fucking animals, not fucking animals, but maybe if you find them that beautiful, but that kind of stuff looks really well. There is a sort of a reliable beauty to it. If you present that kind of stuff, like visually arresting landscapes of natural landscapes and animals and all that sort of stuff, most people will agree it's beautiful. Now, all of that is developed over evolution, through functionality, through these things appear and act and move in a specific way for some functional reason, some perhaps positive intention, as NLP would put it. And my God, right there's a whole other strand I could happily dive down for half an hour. However, is beauty, what was the question? Is beauty objective or subjective? Objective. Yeah. That does not mean that beauty, people may refer to the same thing as beautiful. I guess there's a difference between beauty and personal taste, but it's easy enough for one person to remark on something as beautiful that someone else will not find beautiful. And then, of course, I guess there's more of a loaded element to that question, at least for some people, in the whole redefining beauty. Maybe a lot of people, they hear that question and they instantly think of magazine ideals of what women or men should ideally look like, and what is and isn't sexually attractive as well. And again, inevitably those things will have some relevance to functionality, will have some sort of instinctive purpose or more sort of modernized purpose to whatever makes, say, a person be regarded as beautiful, at least be regarded as beautiful by a significant amount of people. Does that mean they're more beautiful than some other person, or blah blah blah, or they're the most I don't know, but absolutely there is some objective functionality as to why we would be predisposed to commonly find certain things attractive, whether it's sexually attractive or just attractive, something that we are drawn to. So yeah, it could be subjective, but within a very set list of parameters specific to that individual, in the same way that beauty is approximately objective, and that with all fucking hell, what am I trying to say? People should be nice to each other. but again, you know, even just being nice to each other, not judging people by the way they look and all that kind of jazz, and seeing the inner beauty, however much of a douchey cliche that is, even all of that, as a virtue in and of itself, you could say, well, that's beautiful, but that's because that is rooted in some kind of functionality. There's some functional application. There are reasons why it is good. It is beneficial for you as an individual, or us as a people to adopt that kind of attitude. But or as well as, if you like, beauty is approximately objective. And you know, creatively, just as a closer for that, I like different art for different reasons, but generally, I am happy with anything that, whatever effect it's trying to have, or even if it's just a big cash grab or whatever it is, if it involves a great deal of craft, and is presented in a refined, majestic kind of way, then just as with what we could refer to as approximate beauty in nature and in the world around us, I think that is absolutely valid. Not to invalidate anything else, but I think that is absolutely valid. Approximate beauty is objective, in my opinion. Bye. So that's a wrap for now. I quite enjoyed that, and I'm definitely looking forward to a few other things I have in mind in the near future developing this. So thank you very much for tuning in. Bye.